$4,000 gold. I understand. It sounds crazy. $100 silver. We have major changes going on right now in the world oil market. You need to remember, oil is the lifeblood of the world economy. It does much more than power your automobile. It's used in almost all industrial applications. Big changes in the oil market can easily translate into major changes in the gold market, the precious metals market. The world is changing. The political power structure, the economic power structures of the world are changing right now at a pace like we've never seen before. Let's examine this further, and let's do it right now. Have you noticed that everywhere we turn in the last few days, we're hearing about the $60 per barrel price caps placed on Russian oil sales? What does that mean? I was confused, like, how are they going to do this? How does it work? I've got some great information to share with you. We're going to learn something. We are never too old to learn. Basically, what the West, the G7 countries, have said is that any country who's buying oil from Russia is not allowed to do that at any price higher than $60 per barrel. But how could they enforce that? How could they make that happen? Well, it's very interesting when you consider that almost 90% of oil trade is controlled by the G7 nations. And what I mean by that is the maritime moving of the oil, the shipping of the oil. The ability to move the oil is just as important as the ability to get it out of the ground. And the Western G7 countries control that. So they've said that if any country doesn't adhere to the $60 price cap, they're going to cut them off from shipping. And if any shipping company goes against this policy of the $60 price cap, they'll sanction the shipping company. And we're going to cover how this will impact the price of gold, the price of silver, but it's also important to remember that this is forcing the Russians, forcing the Eastern countries to even further move away from the West, move away from the dollar. Now, it's interesting when you consider that currently Russia is selling their oil to their partner countries at a price right around $60 per barrel or less. The name of the oil from Russia, by the way, is called the Urals, not to be confused with urine, Urals. And the Russian foreign minister, did you hear what he had to say? He said this will force Russia to negotiate directly with their partner countries, essentially saying, hey, we're not going to respect this $60 price cap. The other thing this does is it cuts off the West from cheap and abundant Russian oil and gas. It will only serve to increase inflation, increase the cost of oil domestically for the Western countries. Are you a deep thinker? Do you like to dive into the deep end of the pool, look at issues going on in the world from a number of different angles, and then do your best to come up with a thesis in terms of where you think things may go? If you do, I hope you feel like you found a home here in Ron's basement, or maybe a home away from home. You're always welcome here. We'll get through these choppy times together. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe right here. Turn on the little ring-a-ling-ding-a-ling bell icon. That way you'll get notified every time I put out a new video. Now let's get back to the matter at hand. Does it feel like to you that the West is forcing a lot of countries, BRICS countries, and the other 12 countries that have expressed an interest in joining BRICS to make a decision? Do we go with the West or do we go with Russia and China and the East? It sure feels that way to me. And even some harsher words from Mr. Lavrov when he said that Russia will not sell to any country working under the terms of the price cap, even if it's more profitable for Russia to sell to that country. Basically saying if you're going to work with these price caps, you aren't getting any Russian oil. They're playing a long-term game in this situation. Both sides are now forcing a huge number of countries to decide, do we go with the West or do we go with the East? And we have to remember the oil market is huge. It's a huge worldwide market, the most largely traded commodity, largely used commodity on the face of the earth. Can the United States actually exert a high level of control over that market? What it's doing is it's forcing these middle countries to be on high alert. They have to deal with the price caps. They have to deal with the possibility of getting sanctioned themselves, and they have to deal with fear of asset freezes. Things are getting very, very interesting in the world geopolitical stage. And while all of this is happening, we need to circle back around to our friend gold and silver, for that matter. We know that the big central banks around the world, as this split is occurring, many of them are selling U.S. treasuries, including China, including Russia. And what are they buying? A record level of gold. Think about all this from a big picture perspective for a few minutes. What's going on in the world and the landscape that it's planting, performing, preparing for the future price of gold. And to add fuel to the fire, Mr. Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, had some more to say. I want to read you a quote. He said, "This is not about earning a bit more by selling our oil. It's just that we need to start building a system independent from these neo-colonial methods." He also went on to say that basically this is what we're doing with the BRICS nation, Brazil's, Russia, India, China, South Africa, plus the 12 additional countries that have expressed interest in joining BRICS, and the potential of Saudi Arabia joining BRICS, which could erode the whole basis for the petrodollar, which has allowed the United States to exert financial control over the world for the last several decades. Things are getting crazy. Now, bear in mind one more thing as all this is happening, all this bifurcation, splitting. Those countries in the East, they are explicitly supportive of precious metals, gold, silver, platinum, palladium. They're talking about a new currency that will be based on real assets, and that would include gold, silver, oil, other real assets. And it's so important for us to consider that if Saudi Arabia does actually join this alliance, they would then control 30% of the world's oil production. That's a big chunk of production of the world's most highly traded commodity for the United States to try to control and exert absolute authority over. And Russian leader Vladimir Putin himself decided to chime in on this very subject when he said, "The economy of imaginary wealth is being replaced by real hard assets." Do you hear silver? Do you hear gold? He also brought up the point that there's $7.1 trillion US dollars held by foreign countries as reserves in their central banks. Those reserves are being depreciated at an 8% level per year because of inflation, right? We've heard about that. We've been to the gas station and the grocery store. And those countries that hold those reserves in US dollars, they're running the risk that not only are they being depreciated, but they could be sanctioned or seized, as the US government has had a policy and a habit of doing in the recent past. I don't know, guys. What do you think? When you take a step back, take a look at the big picture, take a look at how the world is just continuing to split, and that the other half of the world puts a much higher value on real assets, on things like gold, silver, oil, platinum, palladium. Doesn't it paint a picture of future price gains for those metals? Future value, right? That's what it's about. These are just ounces of metal that we're talking about, kilograms of metal, however you want to measure it. But doesn't it just kind of look like, as we look at the forest through the trees, that the value of those real assets will continue to appreciate? Let me know what you think in the comment section below. As always, I appreciate you. Yes, you joining me here in Ron's Basement, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.